All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Suchin Pak, and it's my honor to welcome you tonight to this double celebration, the presentation of the festschrift in honor of Dr. Dana Robert, and the celebration of the endowment of the Center for Global Christianity and Missions. Dr. Dana Robert has been an inspiration to us all, which is testimony to all these people in the room and how they came from across the nation, across the world to celebrate you. She has been an inspiration in her scholarship, in her teaching, in her mentoring of doctoral students, in her leadership of the center, and really simply as an exceptional human being. We are here to celebrate your remarkable legacy. There are many, many honored guests in this room. In fact, Dana was telling me all the names of the amazing people in this room. There's leaders and scholars and leading missiologists. We couldn't even name you all. And so I'm going just to name a few special guests in the room. I want to especially honor and recognize Dana's family members who have joined for this evening's celebration. A special welcome to Dr. Enos Daniel, who's Dana's husband and former professor of missiology at the School of Theology, as well as Peyton Robert, Dana's father, both of whom are joining us online. Extend a warm welcome to Dana's brother, Kevin Robert, and his wife, Flor, both of whom have been generous donors to the school and have really been amazing partners in this work. And also Kevin played a big part in trying to keep this a surprise. And I want to recognize Dana's sons, John and Sam Massey, and Sam's wife here when she is also here. And I think John's wife, Bonnie, and his daughter, Peyton, are also joining online. So welcome. And lastly, I believe in the room as well are two former deans and professors of the School of Theology, Mary Elizabeth Moore and Bob Neville. So welcome to them as well. You will hear more about our distinguished panelists, so I will not introduce or welcome them, but welcome all, welcome. And we are just going to have a wonderful, fun celebration tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Daryl Ireland, and I am delighted to be here with you this evening on this very special occasion. And I want to begin by thanking all of you for participating in this massive conspiracy of silence. It is not hard, it is very difficult to keep something secret from a detective like Dana Robert. That's why our scholarship is so good. But I know that you have worked hard, in many cases for months, at keeping your lips sealed and your fingers from typing any message that might leak something to her. So thank you for that. And while some people have worked at this for months, others have actually worked on this for years. And I want to acknowledge that this event came out of conversations in 2015. And so there are some who have been keeping this silent for 6 years, and I'm grateful for that. But in particular, I want to thank a number of people. First, Dana has mentored more than 100 doctoral students. Completely incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. And she's done more, though, than produce 100 graduates. She has also knit together a community of scholars that care and look out for one another. And I got to work with them to put an evening together that would honor our mentor. And what a joy that was. So thank you to all of you, her students. Second, I really want to thank Dean Emerita Mary Elizabeth Moore, who was part of this from the very beginning. I mean, she jumped in immediately back in 2015 with this idea and was all on board. And then to Dean Pak, who jumped in with equal enthusiasm just not even a year ago. I'm so grateful for that. And these two deans represent the best of personal and institutional support, and really appreciate that. It's also necessary and a joy to acknowledge the great work of our Development and Alumni Relations Office, Ray Joyce and Andrew Kimball, have done a phenomenal job in putting together the logistics of this evening, the tables, the centerpieces, organizing the food. They've just, from top to bottom, have been outstanding. And they've also made contributions to defer the costs for this evening. So we're so grateful for them. Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Andrew. I'm also very grateful for the people who have made this evening run so smoothly. Eileen Daly and the videographic team, thank you for your work. Our servers who've done such a phenomenal job. And then a number of current PhD students who have been runners, taking care of little problems here and there. They've been fantastic. And I want to acknowledge that this evening is a success in many ways because of your invisible but incredibly important work. And then finally, I want to acknowledge the great work of David Scott, Grace May, who is not with us this evening, and Casely Esamua, who was the editorial team who put together that book that's in front of you. And they were not only fantastic collaborators, but they were also wonderful brainstormers in terms of putting together an evening that we thought could fittingly honor Dana Robert. And so thank you for all of your help. To them, and to the many others who have made tonight so special, thank you. Dana Lee Robert is an extraordinary scholar. To rehearse all her achievements would actually keep us here for the rest of the evening. So I've decided to zero in on just some of the major milestones in only the last 5 years. Dana Robert was a Henry Luce III Fellow in Theology. She was a senior researcher at the Leibniz Institute of European History in Mainz, Germany. The American Society of Missiology honored her with its Lifetime Achievement Award, and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences inducted her into its membership. That's an incredible run of accomplishments in just a few years, but it speaks to her amazing scholarship, which is really what we're here to celebrate tonight. She has made a profound and lasting impression on the Academy and the Church. And Dr. Mark Knoll, Professor Emeritus at the University of Notre Dame, has agreed to help try to put her incredible work in perspective.
It's a real honor to join tonight's celebration of the career of Dana Robert. It's especially fitting for a scholar whose efforts have nourished so many constituencies in so many locations around the world that I am joining others in zooming in from far away to a gathering intended in person by many of those who have benefited from Dana's scholarship and her personal support. It's also characteristic of a life where the fruits of scholarship have very often been put to use for multiple purposes, that this gathering to honor Dana personally with the presentation of a festschrift has a second purpose to announce the endowment of Boston University's Center for Global Christianity and Mission that she brought into being. Others this evening will pay tribute with a much better sense than I have of the day in, day out devotion to teaching, advising, mentoring, editing, nurturing, researching, writing, networking, and collaborating that have brought us to this evening. But even from only a relatively few opportunities that I've had to benefit from Dana's faithful labors, I'm confident in saying several things. First, as a scholar, Dana has demonstrated the importance of subject that the rest of us thought had already received all of the attention they deserved. Her work on A.T. Pierson provides a noteworthy example. Before Dana, Pierson had registered on the radar screen of late 19th century religious history as a celebrated pastor, an associate of D.L. Moody and Charles Haddon Spurgeon, and a dynamic recruiter of missionary for around the world. But not until Dana's careful research was it understood that this preacher activist was also probably the American of his generation with the most thorough knowledge of human civilizations around the globe. Before Dana's work on Pierson, I may have heard of the Missionary Review of the World that Pierson edited for nearly a quarter of a century, but I certainly had not looked into it. When I did, however, I was amazed at the depth and breadth of this journal and the fact that it was as intellectually sophisticated as anything published in the United States, not just concerning missionary endeavor, but about the general circumstance of civilizations all around the world. Dana's studies of women in mission exemplified on a large scale what her work on Pearson did in miniature. Yes, everyone knew that women made up a great portion of the Western missionary force that expanded so rapidly from the middle of the 19th century, but not until Dana, and again, characteristically, working on her own, but also with many collaborators, did people realize how central women were in mission, not just an adjunct, but the driving center of modern missionary endeavor. The result? That research has permanently reconfigured the picture of women missionaries in general history, as well as in the history of Christianity. The key again was effective presentation of perceptive research that moved scholarship to where most of us scholars did not realize it was supposed to be and needed to move. Second, Dana's work has exemplified an extraordinary ecumenical breadth. So ecumenical is far too narrow a word to describe her expansion depiction of worldwide Christianity, past and present. And in around 2011, she produced an extraordinary set of lectures and articles to memorialize the Edinburgh Mission Conference of a century before. Although these accounts treated the theological tensions that would soon break out into the clash of fundamentalist or evangelical versus modernist or conciliar, she has never allowed the battle lines defined by those clashes to straitjacket her own work. Instead, that work has illuminated both denominational and independent efforts of many varieties, missions funded by wealthy donors and the dimes of female societies, Christian expansion promoted by those identified as Arminian, Reform, Holiness, Pentecostal, or the variety of independent Christian expressions that do not fit into any Western categorization. But also in these Edinburgh memorials, she drew even more attention to the paucity of women at that gathering, despite the already overwhelming female contribution to world missionary effort. And likewise, the near silence of participation from those not from Europe or North America, and that at a moment poised to reveal the reality of world Christianity as much more than a Western religion with just a few tendrils meandering out into the rest of the world. Enlisting Dana as the key interpreter of the Edinburgh Centennial came naturally from the recognition she had already gained as a mentor of PhD students. With the self-sacrificing diligence that often made the listing of doctoral dissertations in the International Bulletin of Mission Research look like a press release from Boston University, Dana's supervision has included studies of Christian communities in China, Korea, elsewhere in the Far East, Southeast Asia, throughout Africa, Central and South America, Eastern and Western Europe, as well as many examples of diasporic world Christianity taking root in North America. Wherever you or me might want to go in the study of world Christianity, it's likely that Dana or one of her students had already been there first. I remember how excited I once was in stumbling across the figure of Bernard Maziki and thinking that I was pioneering in introducing this self-effacing but extraordinarily effective pioneer of Christian outreach in Southern Africa to American readers, only to discover that Dana had already said in print almost everything I thought I had discovered for myself. In a word, Dana has practiced an ecumenicity of place as well as an ecumenicity of theology. She has been a leader, along with the late Laman Sana and the recently deceased Andrew Walls, in demonstrating that an ecumenicity of place also entails an ecumenicity of culture. And that realization, which underscores the fact that the Christian faith belongs everywhere, but can never become the possession of any one culture, is the great gift that modern mission studies has given to both the academy and the church. Dana's service in both of those realms, church and academy, is the third matter I would like to stress. My cousin Catherine lives in Bettendorf, Iowa, where she is renowned as a historian of Midwestern quilt making, but where she's also active in her local Methodist church. Some years ago, she wrote to say how much she was enjoying a study prepared by the United Methodist Church designed to introduce lay Methodists to the worldwide spread of Christian faith. She was, of course, referring to Dana's book, Joy to the World, Mission in the Age of Global Christianity, that she had prepared for lay education in Methodist congregations. As it happened, at the very same time, I was assigning her book from Wiley Blackwell, Christian Mission, How Christianity Became a World Religion, as the leadoff text for my course, Introducing the Recent World History of Christianity to Notre Dame undergraduates. For my purposes, the text was ideal because of its economical overview of Christian history from the apostles to the present, but also for its succinct but sophisticated assessment of empire and colonialism in Christian history, of women as important for all aspects of the story, and of the ongoing significance of conversion. We live in a world where the separation of church and state poses unending difficulties, of course, with different difficulties depending upon location, whether you're in the United States or the People's Republic of China, or Mexico, or Russia, or Poland, or Thailand, or France, or India. In a different sphere, however, our Western educational context, the separation of church and academy poses problems of a comparable difficulty. Believing scholars who try to write for both spheres confront contrasting challenges. Church folk are known to react with alarm when confronted with details about foreign places, the necessity to explore complexities, or the imperative of self-criticism. And all of these are now commonplace among serious students of world Christianity. In the academy, a different kind of skepticism can be just as unnerving. Is it really possible for serious scholars to believe that religious convictions are not just superstructure, resting on economic deep structure? Is it really possible for serious scholars to believe that many foreign Western missionaries were not merely tools of empire? Can serious scholars really believe that purported Christian altruism is not simply the covert manipulation of power? There are today, thankfully, more scholars than a generation ago who are willing to risk academic obloquy from their open service to the church, and to risk the suspicion of believers by trying to make scholarship understandable in the sanctuary. But no one has accepted this dual challenge more graciously and more effectively than Dana Robert. Now, as one who follows faithfully in the path that Susanna Wesley set out for her sons, Dana will know that she probably shouldn't believe absolutely everything said about her this evening. The rest of us, though, can be confident that we are giving voice to nothing but the truth.
So at this point, I will invite Reverend Dr. Casely Esamua, if he would sort of help us transition to exploring the book that is on your table.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daryl Ireland. My name is Casely Esamua, and I have the privilege and honor of serving as secretary to the Global Christian Forum. And what a delight it is to be here today, Dana. I wouldn't be anywhere else in the world but here. And thank you for your investment, and thank you for your sacrificial work on behalf of the 100 plus THD, PhD students, as well as thousands and thousands of master's students that have passed through your hands and are serving as leaders of leaders in academy, in churches, in ministries all over the world. And on behalf of them, we just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. It's always a good time to have an opportunity to share some good news, isn't it? I live in Washington, D.C., and we don't have a whole lot of good news from there. So it's good to be in Boston and to share some good news. And this is one such occasion. This is a wonderful book. You have copies on the table. We wanted to have as many people be part of the contributors as possible. And we managed to just limit it to only 12 articles. Can you imagine how difficult it is when you have over 100 people who want to contribute? And then we had also beyond that about 17 people who wrote very short commendations about Dana as a friend. So you are free to take a copy. We want to give it to you, but we also would appreciate a check to the trustees of Boston University, to the center. If you're able to do that, write a check and then leave it on the table. We'll be glad to collect it. I want you to look at it. If you have copies, please open it together. It looks at the whole spectrum of friendship. And the very first 200 pages or so have articles that have friendships in various, from various parts of the world, and how it is seen as an academic subject for missiology. From pages 207, I believe, going, you have the short notes that were written by some of the leaders in world Christianity, as well as leaders in the field of missiology. And at this time, we really want to even put on record the fact that two of those who contributed, Andrew F. Walls and Wilbert Schenck, have already gone to be with the Lord. And probably these contributions were probably the last things that they wrote before they passed on. And they really, really wanted to be part of it. They made sure that we got their articles on time so they could be part of it. So I'll now like to invite three of the contributors to share about their articles, Dr. Sujin Chung, Dr. Angel, and Dr. Anika. And I believe we will go back to the video. We'll try.
Hello, greetings from sunny California. My name is Sujin Chung, Assistant Professor of Practical Theology at Azusa Pacific University, as well as Dana's formal student. It is my great honor to participate in the celebration for Dr. Dana Roberts' contribution to academia, as well as endowment of the Center for Global Christianity and Mission. So congratulations to both Dana and the Center for the endowment. And I had the great privilege of participating in this book project, Unlikely Friends. And I also wrote a chapter that on a topic that is very close to my heart. I wrote about how the transnational adoption movement, spearheaded by female missionary, also had the motif of global friendship and world friendship, and how the female missionaries promoted the theme of global friendship throughout this adoption movement. The reason I chose this topic is actually very personal to me, because I had a very close friend who unfortunately passed away because of leukemia. She was a Korean adoptee, and she was my first spiritual mentor who taught me the Bible, and she discipled me, and I taught her the Korean language. So we had this very unique friendship and a very special bond. And throughout our friendship, I also started to notice that she was adopted into a very loving white American family, but she had this innate desire to know more about her Korean roots. And that got me thinking more about what is Christians' contribution and role in the adoption movement. And surprisingly, I found that Christians, and particularly missionaries, actually spearheaded the transnational adoption movement. And a clear and reoccurring motif that a lot of female missionaries in particular used was this theme of global friendship. And that is very much in line with the ecumenical Christians and missionaries at that time. And the two particular female missionaries that I cover are also in the ecumenical camp. The first one is Pearl Buck, which is a very prolific writer. A lot of people love her as a novelist, but she was also a missionary kid and a formal Presbyterian missionary. And Helen Doss, who was a United Methodist pastor's wife, as well as a pioneer of transnational adoption. These two missionaries and female Christians and thinkers wrote prolifically about adoption as well as anti-racism, and they were successful in fighting against the racial matching system that was prevalent at that time. So the racial matching system was basically white families were not permitted to adopt minoritized children who were mixed race, or who were Black, who were Asian, who were Latino, because simply they believed that was the best social work practice. But Pearl Buck and Helen Doss was able to break that boundary and to really advocate for adoption of so-called unadoptable children, because basically any children that were not white was considered unadoptable or very hard to adopt within the social work circle at that time. And it goes without saying that I was also highly motivated by Dana's scholarship of her basically pioneering of mission as friendship. And her book, Faithful Friendships, is one of the assigned readings for my class. And my students have given me the feedback that it was extremely healing to read that book, especially during this extremely divisive political climate during the pandemic. It was also healing for me, and we have multiple discussions about what it meant to them, how friendship is rooted in Jesus Christ and mutuality and a sense of equality and justice. And that really prompted my students and me to seek reconciliation and to think about friendship in general in terms of missions. And that helped us a lot. And so I'm indebted to Dana again for this amazing book, and not just this book, but her years of scholarship about friendship. And I am so glad and so happy to be able to be here with you, even though it's virtually, and to celebrate our beloved friend and teacher and mentor, Dana Robert.
Good evening. It's a wonderful, beautiful time to be together and to honor Dana, one of our mentors and examples of a faithful friend and scholar. My chapter in Unlikely Friends is entitled Friendship, Gender, and Power. You'll find it in the section entitled The Problems with Friendship. That wasn't the section I chose for it, but the friendship I feature in this chapter was problematic in many ways. It was a friendship between a young Congolese man named Kazadi Mathieu and a young American woman, Edna Kensinger, who was part of an American missionary couple on a mission station in Belgian Congo in the 1920s. Later, Kazadi would become the first president of the Congo Mennonite Church. But at the time of this story, he was baking Edna's bread and carrying her in her traveling hammock. And yet, their friendship helped to subtly shift the dynamics of segregation on the mission station and gave a voice to Kazadi's understanding of the church as a body that brought together people from both sides of the world. Yeah, okay, is that all right? Okay, so yeah, the friendship was problematic, but my goal was to trace the threads of how it was nevertheless transformative, even within a colonial context of deep inequality and injustice. And Dana is the one who taught me to pay attention to these threads. I can identify at least 3 aspects of her scholarship that have helped me to see that a friendship like this one is worth tracing and to try to articulate its ecclesiological significance for world Christianity. So first, Dana has powerfully shown how Christian mission is a driver of church history and of the world Christian movement. For example, I keep coming back to how she says it in her 2009 book, Christian Mission, How Christianity Became a World Religion. Here she makes the contributions of missionaries from every continent visible. She shows how these people crossed boundaries, how they built networks and institutions, and how they worked within complex global political systems as bridge builders who pushed the story of the global church forward. Her work in this area has been critical for helping me understand why the distinction between church history and mission history doesn't make any sense. Secondly, Dana has done so much to show what that boundary crossing actually looks like. I love her metaphor that compares missionaries to spiders, scampering back and forth, weaving and expanding an international web of human relationships. And third, she's shown so skillfully how often women are involved in weaving those webs, and how often friendship is that silky string that helps to hold this whole imagination together. So if I've been able to trace this one friendship between Edna and Kazadi in this difficult colonial context, it's because Dana gave me the eyes to see the revolutionary importance of it. She taught me, see the women, see the friendship, And then you can see the vision of a global church unfolding. So I want to finish with a little story about how I tried to transmit this lesson to the next generation. We were at the ASM one year, I won't specify which year, and there was a presenter there, whom I also will not name, who was giving an interesting presentation on attitudes among missionaries toward something interesting. And during question time, Dana raised her hand and she asked, "Did you do a gender analysis? How many of those who expressed these attitudes were women?" And very unfortunately, the poor presenter had to admit that he had done no analysis whatsoever, and that he did not remember how many subjects in his sample were men or women. We can all feel quite a bit of sympathy for him, because at that point he found himself transfixed by the steely glare that many of us have experienced from Dana at one point or another. So when I went home from the ASM, I told this story to my two daughters and my husband. And since then, often at the table, we've acted out this little scene. One person will say, "Did you do a gender analysis?" And the other person will say, "No, Dr. Roberts." And then one of my daughters has gotten very good at this. Then there's the steely look. So I hope that my daughters are learning two key lessons. Lesson one, don't ever dare to tell a story that doesn't pay attention to what the women are doing and thinking. And lesson two, grow up one day to be a woman with enough backbone to call others to account so they pay attention too. So thank you, Dana, for helping me to see women, the web that brings us together into a global body.
Blessings on this beautiful evening. First of all, thank you, Dana. When I was told that I have 5 minutes to say some words about Dana Robert, I was reminded of John when he said that if we recorded everything that Jesus did, there will be no books in the whole world to put the story. I am privileged to say some words about someone that I admired, respect, and love since my days at Boston University. There are 3 things that we can say that Dana influenced on my life. First, let me address the complexity of the life of missionaries. When I came to Boston University, I had a one-dimensional understanding of U.S. missionaries as agents of U.S. imperialism in Puerto Rico. Dana taught me that blaming the missionaries for colonialism was a way too simplistic approach. She taught me the complexities and the ambiguities of missionary lives as they simultaneously embody the grace of God and the evil of the human condition. Second, Dana taught me that contextual theology is really biographical in nature. As all of us know, no one can do theology in a vacuum. Even though context is everything, I think that biography is essential. After reading Dana's dissertation on the work of A.T. Pierson, a light bulb illuminated my mind to choose a U.S. missionary to Latin America. The life of Richard Shaw tells a fascinating story of human struggles, failures, and victories intertwined with adventure, romance, intrigue, sorrow, happiness, and tragedy. Third, Dana insisted that my research must have life after the dissertation. What she meant was the importance of having a research agenda. As demonstrated in my chapter for Dana's festschrift, Friendship and Latin America, a liberationist perspective, the scholarship of Shaw is not exhausted. The chapter shows the friendships of Jonah Mackay, Richard Shaw, and Ruben Alves, and how those friendships influence the development of Protestantism in the 20th century. Finally, Dana is a devout Christian with a gracious, gracious heart. I am a professor not because of my ability to finish a degree, but because Dana helped me see a vision that the highest calling in life is to serve others through love, devotion, and scholarship. As Proverbs will say, Dana is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. Dana speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting. Of course, this does not apply to Dana Robert, as she is beautiful today as she has ever been. But a whole woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her all the days that you have, and let her words bring praise to those at the city gate. Your legacy lives in the lives of your students around the world. Your wisdom and compassion has guided us to be the best that we can be. I can say today with all my heart that when I grow up, I just want to be like Dana Lee Robert. Thank you. We love you. Bye.
Now I'd like to ask all those who contributed to the festschrift to stand up. If you contributed an article or you wrote a page, or if you all would kindly stand up. I know so many of you are here. We want to show our appreciation. If you would all do that, just show appreciation. Dana, I would like to call you forward now. This is the very first time I'm ordering her ever. Probably the last time ever. And probably the first time I publicly called you Dana instead of Professor Robin. On behalf of, oh, I got to go back. Sorry, I think you have to come. It's a long time to learn these things. On behalf of the many, many of your students who have gone through your hands and the sacrifice that you have made investing in their lives and in getting them to the places where they are, what we want to say, in addition to everything else that's been said and will continue to be said, is today we want to call you our dear friend.
We have another present to go along with the book. It is a statue here of a Sankofa bird. The Sankofa bird being a symbol of the Akan people in West Africa. The bird goes forward while looking back to grab a precious egg and carry it with it. It symbolizes taking what is good and useful and important from the past for the service of now and the future. And we thought that there was no better symbol to represent your work as a scholar of mission history and world Christian history. You have taken many beautiful and precious things from the past and given them to the world Christian community for their work in building up the kingdom. And for that, we thank you.
This is such a wonderful occasion, and I want to remind everyone that this was a surprise party, which was a lot of fun for most of us, but it puts our mentor in a very awkward position, because if you know Dana, you know she does nothing unprepared. And so when she walked in the door this evening, I pulled her aside and I said, Dana, the goal tonight is for you to open your heart and try to receive some of the affection, the admiration, the respect, and the love that we have for you. I do not want you making notes during dinner about who you should thank or mental marks about what you should say. This is an evening where we're really celebrating you. So I'm not going to invite you to give us a long speech, but if you would like to say just a word of thanks, you're very welcome to.
Well, my heart is full. What can I say? This is the first surprise party I've ever had, and I'll never have another one. So I thought my brother and Daryl were going to take me out with my current graduate students and have a little dinner tonight. This is unbelievable, and I'm just so humbled and moved. I would like to say, though, that scholarship for me has always been collaborative. And that is probably a key both to how I proceed with it and the subjects I've pursued. I like theory, I like ethnography, I like biography. When you get right down to it, though, everything is about relationships. And I can still see my teacher, Sydney Alstrom, sitting there patiently drinking coffee while a bunch of ignorant graduate students talked about their own ideas. And my other professor, Charles Foreman, inviting me to professional meetings and walking in there, and the folks there said, welcome, we're so glad to see you. And in a world of negativity, I think that collaboration in scholarship and in many other things gives us insights that we wouldn't have otherwise. Deep down, we're all human beings made in God's image. And that for me is the bottom line in history and in mission. And I'm going to stop here, except one little thing I just have to say is especially gratifying is my poor sons who have grown up with mother as a historian, always talking about the past, and they're rolling their eyes all the time. Ha ha.
What a delight. Absolutely delightful. Dana Robert has made an incredible impact on the fields of world Christianity and mission studies, and she is worthy indeed of a festschrift. However, Dana has done so much more than write and edit a dozen books and author 100-some articles. She, along with her husband, Martina Stenio, founded the Center for Global Christianity and Mission, the first university-based research center of its kind in North America. The center started in 2001 and has expanded rapidly. It launched the first digital humanities project at Boston University and has remained at the forefront of digital scholarship. Today, the center has various research platforms with digital materials that receive more than 1 million visits every year. But it's more than just an online community. The Center for Global Christianity and Mission is also a crossroads where students and scholars from multiple disciplines and practitioners of mission intersect. It also provides numerous lectures and events that bring the reality of world Christianity and mission home to students at Boston University. In fact, the center sponsors at least some kind of event approximately every other week at Boston University. The center remains a cauldron of creativity, with 14 affiliated faculty and 10 visiting researchers. New ventures constantly bubble up. Dana Robert herself is currently spearheading a massive research project on mission and collaboration in North America. And in case you were having doubts if this was a retirement party, let that be clear, it's not. This is a multi-year project going forward. We're just celebrating her work. The center has also recently launched projects on global congregational song, the sanctuary movement in Central and North America, African Pentecostal films, mapping Christianity in China, and the young ecumenical movement. Listen, when the world is your area of study, the possibilities are endless. Tonight, on the 20th anniversary of the Center for Global Christianity and Mission, we want to acknowledge Dana Robert and Enos Daniil for their vision in starting the center and celebrate how it is now a permanent part of Boston University. No one pushed this endowment harder than Dean Emerita Mary Elizabeth Moore. So it is my distinct honor to invite her to speak to us tonight. And then she will be followed by Kevin Robert, Dana's brother and longtime supporter of the center, and then Ray Joyce, the co-sponsor for our evening. Mary Elizabeth.
Thank you, Daryl. And thank you, Dana. We're gathered here tonight to celebrate your birthday and to celebrate the past and the future of the Center for Global Christianity and Mission. For those of you who cannot read the screen, don't worry, you don't need it. For those of you at home, you'll be able to read it. The center's program and the movements that have preceded it have connected people for many decades across changing global contexts. The center has many forebears, and I will share a few of those that have been particularly significant for this center and BU School of Theology. The center was born in the visions of activist women in Boston, 1869. It was born in global connections, ecumenical connections, celebrated and multiplied in the Edinburgh Conference, 1910. It was born in the vision of Truman Collins for a faculty chair in World Christianity and Mission, initiated with a large gift from Truman Collins Sr. in 1910, completed in 2010 with the installation of Dana Robert as the first Truman Collins Professor of Global Christianity and Mission. The installation was actually 2011. Trying to be precise here with my history. It was born in 2001 in the visions of one remarkable woman. Yes, Dana Robert, and her partner in mission and partner in life, Enos Daniil. They dreamed a center that brings people together, builds global friendships, fosters learning and research, and enhances Christian ministries in a world of many cultures, needs, and opportunities. The future is still brewing. As the center partners with people across BU and the School of Theology and around the world. The pictures on the screen only reflect those faculty connected with BU and the School of Theology, and there are hundreds more pictures that could be up there. The center's reach is enormous, only partly glimpsed in this list of digital projects to which Daryl has already referred. The long reach is when endowment became a matter of urgency. We began the endowment effort in 2010 with a plan to continue raising immediate funding as well as endowment. We owe a huge thank you to Ted Karpf, who hopefully is watching from home tonight, who carried that early endowment movement and did a magnificent job. The endowment movement moved slowly, but in the meantime, we were still raising annual gifts, and this woman is able to stretch every single penny and nickel to its fullest. So the center was active beyond imagination with the annual gifts. What became something that was really apparent early on is that if we were going to continue expanding the mission of the center and the future friendship building of the center, we needed to undergird it even further, because we were inspired, the center was inspired to respond to Jesus' command to love one another. Thanks to Ted Karpf and the massive team, thanks to Ray Joyce and Andrew Kimball, we have continued this effort over time, and thanks especially to Daryl. Daryl has done the most amazing job in planning this tonight and initiating and springboarding the endowment, which now is of great urgency in order to guarantee the long future of the center. And it is taking off. In order for the center to be built on a rock, the rock of divine mission and human generosity, it needed an endowment. And now you have done it. I've given thanks to some already, but I want to add my thanks to Kevin and Florestella, Robert, who have been great friends of the center for many, many years and who have been anchors in helping us get this endowment going. So thanks to the two of you as well. We have already surpassed the first endowment goal. As of Wednesday night, we had raised a total of $122,700 for the endowment. $78,000 of that was in cash, and the other $45,000 was in pledges. I have no doubt that that will grow mightily, and we invite you to contribute more this evening and in other places. But what we really want to do is to say thank you. Thank you for what all of you have made possible by being students, scholars, friends, family members, and supporters, moral supporters, financial supporters, friendship supporters of the center. As we gather tonight, we look toward a world now that is blessed by the loving, friendship-building, transformative grace of Jesus Christ. Thanks to all of you for what you have done and for the future that is yet to come.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Robert. I'm Dana's younger brother by 2 years. Unexpected evening for me. A lot of thoughts, but all of you out there, one of the things I want to say is actually Jesus's words when he said, "All authority in heaven and earth have been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." And I think each one of you here tonight and all of your relationships, I want to thank you because I think it's very rare to find a center like this in the university who takes the disciples' charge directly from Jesus and tries to implement it in the way you have. And I want to congratulate each one of you on that. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for giving me a few minutes tonight. I'm going to talk about Dana more as I know her. So if any of you are still students and you need some leverage to help get a better grade, give me a call. I have been Dana's student for almost 63 years. Her birthday is October 9th, 1956. Mine is October 12th, 1958. And when I was born, my parents cursed me by telling Dana, here is your birthday present, take care of it. And the steely stare that you guys are aware, that has been around me forever. I want to thank Enos, who's really been a blessing to us. I'm sorry he couldn't be here. And all of you have been a huge blessing to our family because we're from Louisiana. Dana's been a long way from home all of these years, and each one of you have really loved her work, loved her family, and that's been a great blessing to all of our family down in Louisiana to know that she was so well taken care of. So thank you very much. Our family's small. Dean Pock named almost everybody in our family, with the exception of maybe half a dozen people back in Houston and Baton Rouge. John Howard, who's my dad's first cousin, is here. He lives in Framingham with his wife, Beth, and he's representing the generation of our father. John, thank you so much for being here. And one other missing person is our mother, who was called to heaven in December of last year. She was 88. We certainly miss her, but I know she's got a front row seat and she's in divine company. So thank you for her as well. Let me tell you a little bit about Dana in hopes that something I say might ring familiar and provide a little color on maybe why she is and who she is and how she is. But everything I'm saying is in the context of how she's used these characteristics of her to really further her work in ministry and education. She was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana, not at home in a hospital. So that's a little bit rare for Louisiana. By the 50s, people were being born in the hospital. Our parents, Mary Ellen Spiller from Lake Charles and Peyton Charles Robert Jr. from Baton Rouge, like our grandparents, were shaped by the hard times of the first half of the last century. And that had a lot of impact on all of us. Mom's mother, whose name was Carolyn Cecile King, Granny, as we called her, was born in 1910. She was very proud. She earned her high school diploma at age 20. Her dad ran the general store in the lumber towns that popped up and would usually exist for a couple of years up and down the Texas-Louisiana border, where there are these huge prehistoric pine forests. So they were cutting the forest down, and her dad ran the general store. They would move around. Her mom died from smallpox when Granny was 7 or 8 years old. She got smallpox from feeding a beggar a meal. Mom's father, who we call Paw Paw, was born in 1896. He left school in 3rd grade to put food on the table for his single mother and 2 brothers. Their father was 50 years older than their mother, so he didn't hang around a long time. And Paw Paw was named Jean Lafitte Spiller after the pirate. He had a brother named Admiral Dewey Spiller after the explorer, and another brother named Louis Edward Spiller after King Louis XIV of France. And so his father named the 3 boys after his 3 most admired men in history: a pirate, the King of France, who I think had something to do with the Revolution, and an explorer. Paw Paw grew up in Southeast Texas. He became a railroad man. He served in World War I, working on ammunition trains that were hauling artillery shells back and forth between the front. And then he went to work for Southern Pacific, hauling lumber and supplies from Lake Charles up and down the border of Texas, Louisiana. Paw Paw and Granny married in 1931, and Granny was a member of First Methodist Church of Lake Charles for 80 years, from 1932 until her death in December of 2012. So the Methodist heritage goes way back. Our dad and his parents, they had a big family. He had 8 uncles, 2 aunts. They all earned college degrees. They worked as educators, both in the classroom and administration. Having a family like that with so many degrees was unusual for a generation of cotton pickers and storekeepers born in the late 1800s and the early 1900s down in Louisiana. Mama, our dad's mom, was a librarian, an English teacher, a band teacher, As a teenager, she played the piano at the Paramount Theater for the silent movies. So if you've ever seen Dana play the piano, she learned how to play the piano from our grandmother. Our grandfather was a college athlete and really a preeminent historian of his day. The family moved to Baton Rouge in 1947. Our dad played basketball at LSU, was an excellent tennis player and baseball player. Mom and dad met at LSU in 1954. In 53, they married in 54. Our dad graduated as a teacher, no big surprise there, with a desire to coach. Mom was a journalism major, and she excelled at dancing, theater, music, and art. And I got dragged to many ballet lessons and stuff like that, art lessons, which were really painful. But Dana, I won't comment on Dana's dancing. Mom and Dad went to Germany upon graduation, and Dad considered military career, but with the expanding family, Dana being born, he went back to teaching. Dana's interest in history, which is absolutely amazing. You ask her one question. I asked her one question the other day, and she gave me the history of every Robert or Spiller descendant that had ever been in any war going back to, the year 1400. But she's always had a deep interest and knowledge of our family history. She knew all four of our grandparents intimately, and she spoke weekly to our grandmothers up until their death. So she gathered a lot of information. I hope she writes it down. I think you're working on it, but it's really impressive. She interviewed almost every relative we have, wherever they came from. There's these family reunions that I've never been to any that she goes to all of them and knows all these people, and you get all these long emails that you read 2 sentences and you can't remember who anybody is. But our grandparents and our parents were products of hard work, like everybody in this room. They had few material resources. They survived the early 1900s with all the bad stuff that went on there, the pandemics and the diphtheria and the different illnesses, and all that had a significant impact on Dana. Our grandparents were young adults during the Depression and World War II. Like much of that generation, they took nothing for granted. They expected to be self-sufficient. They made no excuses, and they were devout Christians. They infused all those qualities into our parents, Charlie and Mary Ellen, who in turn expected Dana, our brother Greg, and myself to live a principle-centered life, work hard, and have a plan for our life. Mom and Dad took us to church every Sunday. We fully participated in the life of our church, which was called Ingleside Methodist Church. Dana was greatly influenced by our pastor, Harvey Williamson, who retired in 1990 after more than 50 years of service as the director of the Louisiana Conference Council on Ministries. That was the last position he held in the conference. And Dana fully immersed herself in the activities through Sunday school and youth groups. At age 15, she translated the play Everyman from Old English to Modern English for the youth group's production of that late 15th century morality play. Give you one guess on what the topic was. Every man examines the question of Christian morality and what we must do to obtain it. Seems familiar, huh? So when I think about how Dana became who she is, I can't help but consider a massive set of input, data, perspective, experience that came from Sunday school teachers, music teachers, school teachers, the 1960s, the 1950s, all those family values, her keen interest in history, family heritage, the Billy Graham Crusade. You were saved at the Billy Graham Crusade, right? The social movements of the 1970s and the 1980s, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, our grandparents and parents. And of course, the best instinct she has is her survival instinct that she honed from withstanding the harassment of 2 younger brothers for all those years. So that explains a lot of who she is. All of these elements really shaped Dana, and y'all have already mentioned a lot of this, the previous speakers, but I see her to be relentless in the pursuit of her goals. She's hardworking, focused, driven, highly competitive. I'll tell you one family story that she probably doesn't want out. When she was a little girl, we played hopscotch in the front. She couldn't hop on one leg. She had to hop on 2 legs, which of course means you lose all the time in hopscotch. It just drove her absolutely nuts because she couldn't win in hopscotch. So that's all the dirt I have. She's highly competitive, very curious, very firm-minded. Some of you may say stubborn, but I'll say firm-minded. She always has an opinion. Surprise, surprise, right? She's always seeking perfection and absolutely wants to have control over what's going to happen. To me, Dana exudes integrity in everything she does. She came to New England for graduate school so she could pursue her career without the interference from the expectations and prejudices that existed in the South for a girl born in the mid-50s. Those are not small things. For those of you that grew up here, it's probably hard to understand the expectations of young women born in the 50s and the 60s in the South, but it's a significant hurdle. I mean, so if you're not familiar with it, it's really a big hurdle. So as you might imagine, I watched Dana go through many struggles. I'll always appreciate her breaking the ice in front of me. I had a very easy time as the middle child, the oldest son, because I had a big sister protector for both Greg and myself, and she really still is. However, from my perspective, Dana's always reflected in everything she does the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control most of the time. She's accepting of everyone. She's an empathetic listener, and she passionately pursues whatever she commits to do. She truly has lived her faith and has been one of the biggest inspirations of my life. I'm a firm believer that God has a plan for everyone on this earth, and we're greatly blessed when we're able to discover and fully embrace that plan. Dana always treated her life's struggles, successes, failures, relationships, and circumstances as God-given opportunities and not roadblocks. I believe Dana is one of those rare people who found out what God wanted her to do from early in life, probably 3 or 4 years old. She probably, because she was making Greg and I sit in the carport and learn reading and arithmetic when we were 2 years old. So she was already teaching. She's relentlessly pursued God's plan ever since. I love this verse from Isaiah. It says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." Who would have known the little girl sitting in our carport in 1962 conducting school to teach her brothers reading and arithmetic would be where she is today? Her path is certainly not a path that we could have come up with as humans. Only God could have planned what's happened. Dana, I'm proud of you. I'm very honored to be your brother. I love you. And it's been a real blessing to play a small part in supporting your leadership to spread God's word and make disciples of all men and women. Along with our family and all of you who've supported the center, happy birthday. Congratulations on your success. We pray for many more productive years.
Thank you, Daryl. You put me after Kevin. I'll do my best. Let me first thank Kevin and his family for their tremendous generosity. Kevin has been more than a small part in supporting Dana's ministry. The center simply would not have been able to have the same impact without Kevin. Her little brother has been giving to the center for nearly 20 years, 20 decades, 20 years. 2 decades, don't mind me, not 20, not yet. We're working on that. In total, his family has contributed more than $420,000 in gifts and pledges. This is nearly 30%. This is nearly 30% of all the money raised for the center's operating fund. Thank you, Kevin and Flo. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the late Reverend Paul Winterberry, class of 51, 53, and 61, whose bequest intention made it possible for us to start fundraising for the endowment fund. In March of 2017, we received a $10,000 gift from Reverend Winterberry's estate, and the only restriction was for Christian evangelism and mission, a perfect match for CGCM. His son David and his daughter Barbara Winterberry Sachs are here with us tonight online. Thank you, and please know that your father's legacy lives on. I'd also like to note the efforts of scholar and fundraiser extraordinaire, Dr. Daryl Ireland. Look back now
we were slowly working our way to meet the $100,000 endowment minimum for the center. We had raised about $22,000 in December 2019. We still had a long way to go when Daryl came to my office that December and said, let's raise the rest in time for the 20th anniversary. Daryl wanted to raise nearly $80,000 in short order after it took us nearly 3 years to get to 22K. That was including the estate gift. But how can you say no, or at least that's not very likely, to Daryl, given his enthusiasm? You can't do it. Daryl was on the phone. He was on the road. He was writing emails, letters, day and night. So thanks to his efforts and your generosity, we did it, and in record time too. We surpassed the 100K mark in gifts and pledges in March of 2020. This was less than 4 months after that day that Daryl came into my office. It was also 3 years to the month that we received that generous gift from Reverend Winterberry's estate. Thank you, Daryl, and thank you again to the Winterberry family. And Daryl, please don't take my job, whatever you do. Of course, none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for Dana's commitment to her students, her vision for the center, and its ongoing impact around the world. Everyone has the highest respect for you, Dana, and for all that you do for the school theology, BU, and the global community. Thank you, Dana, and thank you all for supporting the center, past, present, and future. Amen.
This has been a wonderful, wonderful evening. I'm so grateful for all of you having been here. And Dana, I hope you've been able to absorb at least some of the affection, the admiration, the respect that's in the room and online this evening. There's an incredible group of people who would have loved to have been here, and they're sending their support and their encouragement and their good love for you as well. But we did not want the feeling of appreciation and honor to evaporate when you walk out of the door this evening. And so we have prepared a scrapbook for you, filled with cards, notes, letters, photos, artworks from students, peers, family members alike. And we are excited to give it to you because we believe that it might stand as a reminder of this evening, but also bear witness as testimony to the incredible impact that you have had on so many of our lives. Thank you, Dana. And if you'd come and receive the book. I want to mention a special thank you to Allison Keck, who lovingly worked on this up to the last minute with her glue stick to make everything possible. She did an amazing job. You can put that here. If you just maybe say a final word before we go, and then I'll have some final instructions before you walk out the door.
Well, the first thing I want to say is, Kevin, I'll sort you out later. No, love you, brother. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, the center is completely collaborative. Every single project in it was worked on by students. Students with visions, students with ideas. I'd have an idea, a student would have an idea. We'd sit and say, it looks impossible, but let's go for it. And I do need to thank a few people here. First, Andrew Walls, who encouraged me to start the center and said, don't ever get an endowment because, or build an infrastructure, or you'll spend the rest of your life feeding the infrastructure and never do the work that you mean. And he was talking about himself with his center at Edinburgh. So he said, just do it, just launch it. Then my husband, Enos, who shared a vision, and the first part of the center was just a pass-through for doing theological education in Zimbabwe. That's what we did first. So thank you, Enos. I have to thank Bob Neville, who encouraged creativity at every step. Bob Neville never said no when you went to him with an idea, even if it seemed impossible. So I want to thank Bob, who's sitting back here now. And Mary Elizabeth Moore has been the Nehemiah, the builder, who said, you know, things just disappear if you don't put a foundation under it. And she has really was a wonderful person in relation to structure, combining structure and vision in a way that I didn't have that gift. I have to thank Jack Ammerman, who was the third librarian I went to talk about digital humanities, or what's now called digital humanities. And he's the first one who had that vision, and he just excelled and ran with things. And without Jack Ammerman, we wouldn't have the projects that we have. So thank you, Jack. And finally, I want to just thank all of you, all students, people the thing about a Center for Global Christianity and Mission is that nobody who graduates with that interest makes any money ever. and we don't know very many business people either. But the 2 or 3 that I do know, especially starting with my old church youth group friend Kip Knight, started giving money toward a vision in a sacrificial way. Kip Knight, my brother Kevin, Jerry Anderson, these are people who've really been instrumental in supporting the vision of the center. And the accounting offices, the accounting services of the School of Theology, I could just go on and on. Everything has been collaborative and on a shoestring budget. And people who've donated to make the endowment of the center have done it out of the generosity of faith mission level salaries. And I want to make that clear too. It's been the widow's mite that's done this. And so I want to thank all of you for being here, especially, and giving me the best birthday party I could ever have had. So thank you, Daryl, especially to you, David, Casely, Annika, Ray, Mary Elizabeth, Kevin, everyone. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. And thank you all for being here tonight. Before we close, please remember that no one here should leave without a book. If they're there available on your table. If they're already gone from your table, there are others over here on this side. So grab a book before you leave. If you want to throw a donation into the basket, you're welcome to do that. Cash or a check made out to Boston trustees of Boston University is fine. But that is not a requirement for this evening. As Dr. Robert just said, we realize that not everyone has the cushion for a book right now. Take a book with you. It's our gift to you. We are just so grateful that you could be here and celebrate with us tonight. It has been a delight to be with you. And so I say before we go, peace be with you. And thank you for being with us. Enjoy the time of fellowship with one another and take a moment to still greet Dana Robert before you walk out the door tonight. It's been good to be together. Thank you.